But it's still, rather than admit there's a creator God, they would rather propagate a lie than to give in and say there is a creator God, and he might be the reason that we are what we are. So we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to show about 30 minutes. We're going to then try to have at least 15 minutes of discussion. To save time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, because I want the folks at home to be able to hear your questions, okay? I know that some of you absolutely will not get up in front of a microphone and talk. So I'm going to pass out index cards for you to write your questions and comments on. I will place a microphone in the middle here for those that want to speak. Let me urge you, we only have about 15 minutes. I do not need a sermon, okay? Make your comments brief and to the point, and that way everybody gets a chance to have their question and their comment heard, okay? Yes, if you don't mind. If you would, I got to open this pack. I forgot to open it. I had that pack open. Here, I'll just let you open it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this will be for as you go through the documentary, if you have a comment or a question that you just absolutely refuse to speak into a microphone, just write it down. You don't have to put your name on it. This is completely voluntary. But this is to help the folks at home who are listening in to stay part of the program. Mona and I are doing the best we can to fill them in, but it's much better if it just comes directly from you and it saves time. So write your comment. We'll collect it at the end of the movie, and then we will read your comments. If you put your name, we'll say your name. If you don't put your name, we won't say your name. It's voluntary. And while we're at it, then I'll set a microphone up here so you can, those of you that do want to speak can speak to your own point. But please, we have a limited amount of time. We'll talk more after the 3 weeks, I promise. All right, so I think I have done good not to take up too much time myself. So if you're ready, this is called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. And it is a documentary about the battle in the science and education field between evolution and creation that's going on right now. So, Mona, if you're ready. Those of you who may not be familiar, this is the building of the Berlin Wall.
battle of evolution is only one skirmish in a much larger war.
Science simply makes no use of the hypothesis of God.
Ask yourself, what does intelligent design give us? Nothing.
We cannot accept intelligent design as an alternative scientific theory.
They will never accept that we have a better argument. They just pester us and they waste our time.
Ben is speaking on the topic that has become increasingly important to him over recent years. While Ben has always been an ardent supporter of science, lately he has noticed an alarming trend in the scientific establishment that could have dire consequences for every American. Without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome for Mr. Ben Stein.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, gangsters. Thank you very, very much. Freedom is the essence of America. We're talking about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom from fear, freedom of religion. Martin Luther King said, America is essentially a dream, and he said it is a dream of freedom and equality, and freedom is the way to equality. And America simply would not be America without freedom. In every turning point in our history, the decision has always been about freedom.
Freedom is what makes this country great. Freedom has allowed us to create, to explore, to overcome every challenge we have faced as a nation.
But imagine if these freedoms were taken away. Where would we be? What would we lose?
Well, unfortunately, I no longer need to imagine. It's happening. We are losing our freedom in one of the most important sectors of society, science. I have always assumed that scientists were free to ask any question, to pursue any line of inquiry without fear of reprisal. But recently, I've been alarmed to discover that this is not the case. It all began when I met evolutionary biologist Richard Sternberg in Washington, D.C. His life was nearly ruined when he strayed from the party line while serving as editor of a scientific journal affiliated with the prestigious Smithsonian Museum of Natural History.
Your office was over there?
That's correct. This here is the West Wing. Directly ahead of us is the West Wing of the Natural History Museum.
So now you're not there anymore because you're a bad boy.
No, I'm not. No, I was exiled.
You're a bad boy. You question the power.
What was Dr. Sternberg's crime? He dared to publish an article by Dr. Stephen Meyer, one of the leading lights of the intelligent design movement. The paper ignited a firestorm of controversy merely because it suggested intelligent design might be able to explain how life began. As a result, Dr. Sternberg lost his office, his political and religious beliefs were investigated, and he was pressured to resign.
The questioning of Darwinism was a bridge too far for many. The mentioning of intelligent design that occurs at the end of the paper was over the top. And I think the intelligent design proponents have raised a number of very important questions.
And you wanted to get those questions brought up and discussed.
Placed on the table.
Placed on the table.
People were so upset about it. They were so upset that you could see they had a physical, emotional reaction.
Wow.
They were saying that Stephen C. Meyer is a well-known Christian, that Stephen C. Meyer is an intelligent design proponent, that Stephen C. Meyer is a Republican. It was all couched in terms of religion, politics, and sociology. The way the chair of the department put it is that I was viewed as an intellectual terrorist.
Terrorist.
Because of giving the topic of intelligent design some modicum of credibility.
What happened to Dr. Sternberg was terrible, but surely it was just an isolated case. I was still pretty skeptical, so naturally I checked in with the head of the Skeptic Society, Michael Shermer.
So I can't prove there is no God or Yahweh in your case, any more than I can prove there is no Isis, Zeus, Apollo, Brahma, Ganesha, Mithras, Allah, or for that matter, the flying spaghetti monster. And think about just one thing. Why would the aliens look like this?
Well, that's
these are
who drew that?
bipedal.
Who drew that?
Skepticism, it's not a position you take. It's just an approach to claims.
This one is called the borderlands of science,
Yeah.
where sense meets nonsense. Is intelligent design nonsense?
Well, it's unproven. So in that sense, it's nonsense. So I would put it in the sort of shaded areas between good, solid science and total nonsense. You know, it's sort of 3/4 of the way toward the nonsense side.
But you think, nevertheless, people should be allowed to speak about it and publish papers about it?
They are free to write and publish and be heard in public forums and go to conferences just like everybody else does.
Well, what if a person published something, say at the Smithsonian, in favor of intelligent design, and then lost his job over it? And it had been peer-reviewed, and published, and then he lost his job over it anyway. What would happen? What do you think about that situation?
I think that particular situation, there was something else going on.
What was going on?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know because I don't know, but I think had to be something. People don't get fired over something like that. You roll up your sleeves, you get to work, you do the research, you get your grants, you get your data, you publish, and you work your butt off, and that's how you get your theories taught.
Well, but wait a minute. What if you try and roll up your sleeves and go to work and work your butt off, and they say, well, we're going to fire you if you even mention the word intelligent design?
I don't think that's happening. Where is that happening?
George Mason University. Throughout its 50-year history, our mission has remained clear: to prepare a diverse population of students to think and to grow in a climate of unbridled academic freedom.
After Dr. Caroline Crocker simply mentioned intelligent design in her cell biology class at George Mason University, her promising academic career came to an abrupt end.
My supervisor invited me into his office. He said, I'm going to have to discipline you for teaching creationism. And I said, I mentioned intelligent design on a couple of slides, but I did not teach creationism. He said, nonetheless, you have to be disciplined. At the end of the semester, I lost my job.
Not only did this well-loved professor lose her job at George Mason, she suddenly found herself blacklisted, unable to find a job anywhere.
So whenever I interviewed for a job, I would be offered it, usually on the spot. Since this has happened, and since people can Google my name, I'm finding that when I send my credentials, I do get interviews. I get many interviews, but I never get offered a job. I don't tell them about my science sin. I was only trying to teach what the university stands for, which is academic freedom.
There's nothing to be learned in neurosurgery by assuming an accidental origin for the parts of the brain that we work on.
It wasn't just biologists who were feeling the Darwinist wrath. When neurosurgeon Michael Egnor wrote an essay to high school students saying doctors didn't need to study evolution in order to practice medicine, the Darwinists were quick to try and exterminate this new threat.
A lot of people on a lot of blogs called me unprintable names that were printed. There are a lot of very, very nasty comments. Other people suggested that people call the university I work at and suggested perhaps it's time for me to retire. I realized when I kind of went public with my doubts about the adequacy of Darwin's theory that I would encounter criticism. What has amazed me is the viciousness and the sort of baseness of it.
I'm an old guy. I have tenure. I'm academically safe. But the young people and what is happening to them in America right now because of this scientism gulag is really terrible.
Apparently, Professor Marks was not as safe as he thought. A few months after this interview, Baylor University shut down his research website and forced him to return grant money once they discovered a link between his work and intelligent design.
In order to attract grants, you have to market yourself. So you put up sites and call yourself labs and groups and things like that in order to get visibility. And in my entire experience in academia, I never went to any superior and asked them any permission to put up any of these labs. So the fact that this was singled out, let alone shut down, is jaw-dropping. It's astonishing. I have never been treated like this in my about 30 years in academia.
Shut up, you freak! I said shut up! It's a man!
If you peel back the onion, I think that there is no doubt that the center of this is my work in what some would call intelligent design.
People really get emotional about this. Whenever you say intelligent design in a room of academics, them's fighting words.
Creationists. Astronomer Guillermo Gonzalez found himself in a fierce shootout with Iowa State University following the publication of his book, arguing that the universe is intelligently designed. Despite a stellar research record that has led to the discovery of several planets, his application for tenure was denied, putting his career in jeopardy.
I worried about my tenure a little bit in 2005 when the petition was being circulated because I viewed that as a strategy of Hector Avalos and his associates to try to poison the atmosphere on campus against me because he knew I wasn't tenured yet and I was very vulnerable. I have little doubt that I would have tenure now if I hadn't done any professional work on intelligent design.
Dr. Gonzalez had this advice for scientists who might be thinking about following his example.
If they value their careers, they should keep quiet about their intelligent design views.
We know there are times and places to be quiet, and other times and places when we can make noise if we want to.
Will you show us?
Of course. Boys and girls, how would you like to show some of the ways we know of being quiet?
It's the kind of thing where you just learn to keep your mouth shut.
In addition to those scientists who were willing to appear on camera, we encountered many more who didn't dare show their face for fear of losing their jobs.
You use an intelligent design perspective to get the research done, but you're not allowed to talk about it in public.
And so there is definitely incentive, if you think about it, for people to remain within the mainstream.
You know, what's he up to? What is he thinking? Is he one of them? That kind of thing.
If I write intelligent design, they hear creationism. They hear religious right. They hear theocracy.
So it appears Mr. Shermer, the self-styled skeptic, was wrong on this one. Intelligent design was being suppressed in a systematic and ruthless fashion. But maybe intelligent design should be suppressed. I didn't like what was happening to these scientists, but on the other hand, we don't want our kids being taught that the Earth is flat or that the Holocaust never happened. It was time to ask the scientific establishment what was so bad about intelligent design.
Intelligent design people are not genuine scientists.
Intelligent design is a racket.
It's just propaganda.
The only intelligent thing about it is to have got people to call it that.
It's really very stupid as well. Everybody knows science education in America is appalling. What we don't need at this time is intelligent design in the classrooms. To present intelligent design stunts their educational growth, it stunts their intellectual growth.
But what I don't understand is how these animals could have been on Earth millions of years before man, and the Bible says the whole Earth was created in only 6 days.
It wasn't just the educational aspects of intelligent design that had scientists concerned. Many suspected the movement masked a much larger agenda.
Intelligent design is a set of excuses to squeeze creationism into the classrooms.
Get intelligent design in the schools today, and we can have school prayers tomorrow.
Any other complaints?
Can you imagine anything more boring? The boredom attached to ID is supreme. It is so boring that I can't even bother to think about it. It's just utterly boring.
Love is in the air, everywhere I look around. Love is in the air, every sight and every sound.
Love was in the air, all right, but none of it was directed toward intelligent design. There seemed to be a lot to hate about ID, and nearly all of that hatred was focused on one place.
The people from the Discovery Institute, the people who are doing the intelligent design, they're all varnish and
no product.
The Discovery Institute is a propaganda mill. It's an institution designed to suck in money from religious investors and turn it into a sanitized, somewhat secular version of the creation story to get it into the schools.
If they have a way of understanding nature that's superior to the one that we all are making lots of discoveries using, great. Bring it on.
We are really, really lost. I think it's on third. I think it's on third. I think it's down there. I have no idea where this place is. I guess I'll just keep walking. Do you have any idea where the Discovery Institute is? Have you ever heard of that? Never heard of it. Okay, thank you. How are you, sir? Good. Do you have any idea where the Discovery Institute is?
Not a clue.
Discovery Institute. Thank you. It's very kind of you to offer.
Welcome to Seattle.
Thank you, sir. It's got to be this whole building. Yes, where is the Discovery Institute, please?
Discovery Institute on the next floor, suite 808.
Okay. Very good. Aha! Success at last. Aha! We found you. Are you Bruce Chapman?
I am.
How are you? I'm Ben Stein. Very kind of you to have me here.
I'm delighted to meet you.
Can I look around and see your office?
Absolutely.
Do you just have this floor, or do you have several other floors as well?
No, this is it.
This is it? You've made an awful lot of trouble for being in such a small office. I thought it was going to be like the Pentagon.
We're like the little boy that said the emperor has no clothes. And he didn't have a big organization either.
When you go around and raise funds, your people are not saying to you, by the way, we're going to get all these scientists out of the classroom and put Christ back in the classroom.
Well, I don't know that Christ has ever been in the science classroom. This is not a religious argument. This is something that people, we have fellows who are Jewish or agnostic or various other things. There are people, there are Muslim scientists. There are people of all kinds of backgrounds who agree that Darwin's theory has failed. And so why would you bring religion into it? You don't need religion. This is a red herring, Ben. People who don't have an argument are reduced to throwing sand in your eyes.
Well, if the Discovery Institute could get its wish about this subject, what would your wish be?
Well, on this subject, as on others, we'd like people to be able to have a robust dialogue and even a debate where the evidence, the best evidence, but in this case, the best scientific evidence is made available to people.
Well, surely no one questions there should be a debate.
Oh, yes, they do.
They do?
They say the debate has been settled.
Well,
that the issue's
when
settled.
was the debate settled?
Ben, I'd like you to talk to the scientists. You don't want to get your science from me.
Mr. Chapman claimed ID had nothing to do with religion. So why was my first stop Biola University, formerly known as the Bible Institute of Los Angeles?
Your own personal Jesus, someone to hear your prayers, someone who cares.
History of science.
Your
Inference in
own
Stonehenge was caused by intelligence.
personal Jesus,
In terms of all the knowledge.
someone to hear your prayers, someone who's there.
How much money have you ever gotten from Jerry Falwell?
$0.
How about Pat Robertson?
0.
Are you a minister?
No.
Are you a priest?
No.
Pastor?
No.
Youth pastor?
Oh, I did teach Sunday school once.
Has this all been resolved? I mean, aren't we all Darwinists now? Except for a few cranks like you?
Well, it's a funny thing that questions that aren't properly answered don't go away. This question is loaded with all kinds of political baggage, but one-on-one at a scientific meeting after the third or fourth beer, my experience has been that many evolutionary biologists will say, yeah, this theory's got a lot of problems.
So you mean to tell me that there really is a debate among scientists about whether or not evolution occurred?
Well, evolution is a kind of funny word. depends on how one defines it. If it means simply change over time, even the most rock-ribbed fundamentalist knows that the history of the Earth has changed, that there's been change over time. If you define evolution precisely, though, to mean the common descent of all life on Earth from a single ancestor via undirected mutation and natural selection, that's textbook definition of neo-Darwinism. Biologists of the first rank have real questions.
But the modern theory of intelligent design is just microwaved creationism.
I don't think that's the case. Creationism, properly understood, begins with the Bible and says, how can I fit the Bible into the data of science? Intelligent design doesn't do that. Intelligent design is the study of patterns in nature that are best explained as a result of intelligence.
So intelligent designers believe that God is the designer?
Not necessarily. Intelligent design is a minimal commitment scientifically to the possibility of detecting intelligent causation.
Dr. Nelson didn't sound like a crazy person, but I still suspected ID was nothing but reheated creationism. My next stop didn't seem like it was going to alleviate those fears.
I didn't crawl out of the ocean, I didn't come from no monkey. Science tends to forget evolution's just a theory. They present it in the textbooks and on animal TV. Like it's fact, but tell me, were you there 12 million BC?
Evolution is from an intelligent design perspective, is perfectly acceptable if the sense is that how did the design get implemented? The issue is there real design there, and are these material mechanisms like natural selection, are these adequate to account for everything we see in biology? And our argument is no, it's not.
But Darwin produced all this evidence from his travels and his studies at the Galapagos that evolution explained things.
If you look at the history of science, people often have a good idea and then they decide just to run with it. And they say, we're going to apply this everywhere. And so Darwin takes his idea of natural selection and says, I'm going to explain all of life with it. I mean, physics used to be Newtonian physics. Newton was physics. And then you got to look to Einstein, general relativity. It's not, Newton isn't enough. Well, I think likewise what we're finding with Darwin is that he had some valid insights, but it's not the whole picture.
Okay, Darwinism may not be the complete picture, but what made these guys think they had the missing pieces? I put this question to Dr. Stephen Meyer, author of the paper that originally got Dr. Sternberg in so much trouble.
It's hard to believe that this little town is the headquarters of giant Microsoft, which enabled Mr. Gates to become fantastically rich. Maybe that's what Steve Meyer's doing. Maybe this is somehow going to make him fantastically rich. We'll pin him down like a butterfly on a butterfly board. Butterfly on a killing board. Coffee shop straight ahead.
Newton is buried in the geniuses corner at Westminster Abbey, right?
That's correct, yeah. Darwin is also buried at Westminster Abbey.
Right, and so is Darwin, right near each other, right? And you're here in Redmond, in a little building without a sign, right? And you're obviously an incredibly smart guy, but how dare you challenge someone who's buried in the geniuses corner next to Newton at Westminster Abbey?
Well, it may seem a little cheeky, but it's what scientists are supposed to do. When I was in Cambridge, one of my supervisors often advised us to beware the sound of one hand clapping, which was a way of saying if there's an argument on one side, there's bound to be an argument on the other. And what I found in studying the structure of the argument in The Origin of Species is that for every evidence-based argument for one of Darwin's two key propositions, there is an evidence-based counter-argument.
Well, but is it a debate? I mean, there's just you and a couple of other guys in a dinky little office downtown, say on one side, and there's the faculties of all the great universities of the world on the other side.
Speaking with a great uniform and authoritative voice.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in any case, the debate really isn't going to be settled by numbers. It's going to be settled by the evidence and the arguments.
While I was still in Bill Gates country, Dr. Meyer recommended I check in with molecular biologist Jonathan Wells. What kind of names do they call you?
Creationist.
What do you say back to them when they say you're a creationist?
Well, I usually don't get the opportunity.
What's at stake for you personally here?
First of all, I love science. I think
The way Darwinism corrupts the evidence, distorts the evidence, is bad for science.
Well, the other scientists will tell you to just shut up if you love science, okay? Because you're sort of being a bomb thrower into science.
I am upsetting the apple cart, and I think it deserves to be upset in this case.
Why?
Because the evidence is being distorted to prop up a theory that I think doesn't fit it.
Was Darwinism really that bad? Perhaps a change of scenery would give me a fresh perspective.
Quand je t'ai vu au coin de la rue, tout est vide, j'ai cru que tous les deux, sous le ciel bleu, nous serions très heureux.
Mr. Berlinski, I assume? How are you, sir? So where are you from originally?
I was born in New York.
Yes.
Spent 31 years in Manhattan.
Yes.
And I spent a lot of time in California, too.
And tell me all the various universities where you studied or taught.
I was at Princeton, then I had a professorship at Stanford, and then I left Stanford, and I taught at Rutgers. I left Rutgers, and I taught at the City College in New York. I left the City College in New York. I taught at the Baruch College. I taught at San Jose.
What did you teach at Baruch College?
Anything they wanted. Come on in.
Thank you, monsieur.
What an old building. Wow. It's the oldest in Paris.
You're kidding. Merci, monsieur.
Ah, je vous en prie, monsieur.
Merci. Wow, this is fabulous.
Let's put it this way. Before you can ask, is Darwinian theory correct or not, you have to ask the preliminary question, is it clear enough so that it could be correct? That's a very different question. One of my prevailing doctrines about Darwinian theory is, man, that thing is just a mess. It's like looking into a room full of smoke. Nothing in the theory is precisely, clearly, carefully defined or delineated. It lacks all of the rigor one expects from mathematical physics, and mathematical physics lacks all the rigor one expects from mathematics. So we're talking about a gradual descent down the level of intelligibility until we reach evolutionary biology. We don't even know what a species is, for heaven's sakes.
So his theory is smoke, but elegant smoke.
There's a certain elegance to it, but I think Einstein had the appropriate remark. He preferred to leave elegance to his tailor.
A room full of smoke? That certainly wasn't what I was hearing from prominent Darwinists like Richard Dawkins.
Evolution is a fact. It's a fact which is established as securely as essentially any other fact that we have in science.
Richard Dawkins is so confident that evolution is a fact, and that therefore God doesn't exist, that he has devoted his entire life to spreading the evolution gospel.
I'm an atheist with respect to the Judeo-Christian God because there is not a shred of evidence in favor of the Judeo-Christian God. It is completely right to say that since the evidence for evolution is so absolutely, totally overwhelming, nobody who looks at it could possibly doubt that if they were sane and not stupid. So the only remaining possibility is that they're ignorant, and most people who don't believe in evolution are indeed ignorant.
But the people I spoke with weren't ignorant. They were highly credentialed scientists. So there had to be something else going on here.
So you think the whole theory of evolution is false, or just certain parts of it?
Well, again, evolution is a slippery word. I would say minor changes within species happen. But Darwin didn't write a book called How Existing Species Change Over Time. He wrote a book called The Origin of Species. He purported to show how this same process leads to new species, in fact, every species. And the evidence for that grand claim is, in my opinion, almost totally lacking.
How does Darwin or Darwinism say life began?
Well, he didn't know, and in fact, nobody knows. So Darwinism, strictly defined, starts after the origin of life and deals only with living things.
Well, how can there be a theory about life without a theory about how life began?
Well, a grand overarching evolutionary story, of course, does include the origin of life. But Darwin's theory doesn't begin until you have the first cell.
Well, does someone have a theory about how life began?
All right, that's the end of this morning. So you've got the introduction to this. And of course, those of you who were here last week know that the next segment is where the harsh criticism really starts and the attacks start to take place. So, if you've filled out a card, could I have my folks that pass them out go collect the cards? If anybody has a question or comment about it. All right. Yeah. But you had your chance. All right. So I'm putting a microphone right here. If you want me to bring it to you, I will. I'm just asking you, and I know the minute I set a microphone out there that the fear sets in. But just consider this is for the folks that are at home so that they can hear your questions and comments. I would appreciate it if you did that, or I would be happy to bring it to you. It's up to you. So what are your impressions? This is just the introduction. So one of the things that I would bring up to you is that how small the Discovery Institute is. You would think that someone that is causing that much havoc in the evolutionary community would be, like he said, like the Pentagon or something, but this is just a small office in Seattle with a group of scientists who are trying to say that there had to be something besides Darwin's theory of evolution and origin of species that began life. And of course, they'll get deeper into that, and you'll see them become physically upset that you would even challenge anything, or that Ben Stein does. So it's kind of interesting with that, isn't it? And that's why, and listen, I'm going to be honest with you. There are pastors in the Free Will Baptists, there are people in the Free Will Baptists that wish people like me would shut up because they feel comfortable with putting billions of years into the Bible and playing right along with the theory of evolution. But again, if you try to put billions of years into the Bible, you are saying that death, destruction, life began before God even created Adam and Eve. So that is a direct slap in the face against the Bible for a Christian to believe in millions and billions of years. It just could not have happened. So if you can imagine, I've had pastors both in this denomination and others that wish guys like me would just shut up until, especially one of the breakthroughs really was when Ken Ham built the Creation Museum in Kentucky and the Ark Encounter. And now he has been able, now they're not the only ones. One of my favorite is the Institute of Creation Research, which has been around since the 1960s. Dr. Henry Morris, who really wrote the book on the Genesis flood with Reverend John Whitcomb, finally got the church, after decades of believing in millions and billions of years in the Bible, got them to turn around and say, listen, that's not possible. And started the conversation about that God created the heavens and earth, that this is a young creation, and that billions and billions of years, and as you can see, as you know, most folks don't, they think every scientist is an evolutionary scientist, and that's not true either. There are just about as many scientists who are creationists out there as there are evolutionary scientists. The problem is their evidence is suppressed and not allowed to be published. So guys like Henry Morris and Ken Ham, who have built these organizations, now we've been able to get the word out ourselves. Dr. Grady McMurtry, one of my earlier guys that really got me into looking at the other side of creation as far as being a Christian. So, what do you think? Yes. is what I have to do now. And what Rhonda is saying is that the one part where Professor Mark says Professor Wells says they would like to put him in a gulag somewhere and hide him away because he challenges the fact that Darwin's origin of species does not measure up. How about the scientists and the teachers and educators that have been fired? And you see, we think that doesn't happen. Every church you go to that teach creationism, they think that's not really true. We're not that blind, but it really is true. Yes. All right, and you might have noticed, and Miss Kim's talking about how they keep referring to the theory of evolution, which means they haven't proven anything. They have a hypothesis. It's a theory. You might have noticed that even one of the evolutionary scientists said, in fact, it was Richard Dawkins, who's probably the world's leading atheist and the author of the book, The God Delusion, said that there's just too much evidence for the theory of evolution than there is for creationism. But that's not really true. It's just you're not allowing the evidence to be brought out, right? Yeah, let me just, okay, anybody else? I'm going to say something. Yes, go ahead. That's a very good observation, and I'm assuming you're talking about people like Richard Dawkins. And for the folks at home, yeah, I'm still learning. Marissa is saying is that why is Dawkins going around the country doing all these interviews? In fact, it's very difficult, by the way, to get them to debate a creation. I do know some. In fact, he will debate. Oh, I can't remember his name right now, but he looks like Santa Claus. But he is a, triple doctorate in mathematics, and his name will come because I love the guy. But right now I'm having an Edison moment. And in the debate, which I've watched several times, he just rips Richard Dawkins apart because it is a theory. It is, and there's no proof. Like he's talking about the fossil record. There is no evidence in the fossil record of anything becoming anything. There's nothing. There's nothing. You've got this and you've got that. And that's what you have. So, but if evolution happened over small, gradual, long spaces, somewhere in the fossil record there should be some kind of fossil of a creature in the in-between spot, right? Before it jumps to this. And there is none. There is none. It's one of the best arguments. Yes? Yeah. Right. And there isn't, and there isn't. And keep in mind, if I was teaching a class and I was an evolutionary scientist, I'm teaching a class, and I show the fossil record and by the sediment that's been over the years, I'm going to have it in perfectly aligned forms, like, here's limestone, here's granite, but the truth is, if you've ever been to places like West Virginia or the Grand Canyon or Kentucky, you'll see that those layers are not uniform, right? In fact, I read this morning, and I'm just going to say this, but I'm going to tell you right now, I have not confirmed it, but that the top of Mount Everest, the very top of Mount Everest, is a stone that is well known to have been at the bottom of the earth at one time. Marine limestone. So how did that marine limestone start down here and end up in one of the tallest mountains in the world? All right, Lisa. All right, good. See, I'm doing my best to keep up with you folks at home. You see, I'm not getting a lot of cooperation. But, yeah, tailless monkey. What's an ape? It's a tailless monkey. That's what it is. But again, we don't find anything in the fossil record of an ape or a monkey becoming a man. Now, they've tried to prove to you over the years that they have that, right? But what we know now is many of those things like Lucy and Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthal man, we now know that what they found was a little sliver of bone, made their own drawing of it, and added artificial pieces to it to make it what they thought it would look like, and it's not real evidence or real truth. Go ahead, Brother Darrell. Thank you for being patient. Yeah, and you'll see that there are different layers. I mean, you'll find limestone at the bottom of the canyon. You'll find limestone at the top of the canyon, and it'll be mixed. And oh, gee, I am running out of time. So you see what I'm saying? It's not orderly. It's not like you'll find this, 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 and this. So yes, you would expect to find that you're going to have all kinds of fossils. Let me ask you something. Does a fossil really generate over long, gradual periods of time? Or does it speak to a global flood that completely upended the earth and moved things everywhere, and animals and humans were swallowed up in the mud, in the limestone, and we can find them anywhere? That's why we find mammoth fossils over in the Dakotas. We also find them in China. It's because the earth at one time, and I got to quit, the earth at one time was one big piece of land. It was called Pangea. That's what we scientists call it. And that's probably the only thing that we agree on with the evidence presented. But because of the flood of Noah, remember what's the first thing that happened with Noah's flood? Well, it wasn't rain, was it? No. Right, the waters of the deep came up and brought with it, just like a volcano, a hurricane. You can imagine that when those waters come up that have been pressurized for about 1,600 years, come up and they tear the landscape of the planet. They separate. Have you been reading in the news about places in, I think India is one of them, where the tectonic plates are moving and breaking the land open again and separating them? That's what happened at the flood. That's why, and I'll bring my 3D globe in here one day and just let you look at it. You'll see when you look at the base of these continents, they are like a puzzle piece that would fit perfectly back together if they were all mashed together again. So, what you've seen today, and I better conclude this, but thanks for commenting. It was a try. It was a try. And I hope you folks at home I was able, between Mona and I, we were able to clearly help you with that. But you've just seen the introduction. The heavy hitting comes next. And so, I hope that you at least got the idea of what you're up against, of spiritual wickedness in high places. Even places that you know, I don't know how most Americans feel today, but you supposedly trust. And it's a shame that you can't trust them to at least bring to the table the possibility that there was a God who intelligently created heavens and earth and all life. But they reject that completely. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you today for allowing us to be together. I pray, Father, that you will raise up in us this awareness of the battle that we're really in. Our minds think back to Wednesday night with Brother Michael and his teaching in 2 Peter, talking about how they will cleverly and subtly change the truth into a lie and will deceive many because of the way that they just gradually bring lies into the truth of the Word of God. And I ask you today to help us to remain diligent, to stand and to take a stand for the Word of God today, for we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you, folks. Thank